dilemmas. Join us on Slido. We're going to be doing the poll. If interested, you just go to slido.com. If you were in our session yesterday, it's very similar. Same website. And then from there, you'll type in ethics, and then you'll be able to participate. If you don't have your phone and don't want to do that, you can also do it verbally just by raising your hand. Okay, and again, this is our session, The 7 Deadly Sins of Fundraising and Other Ethical Dilemmas by Jennifer and me. So to introduce ourselves, again, my name is Chessie Hayes, and I'm the Director of Development at Meriton. Play on word, being a good Samaritan. That rings a bell. So at Meriton, our mission is to improve well-being and promote independence throughout all life stages with quality and compassion. So the nonprofit that I work for provides a variety of programs from specialized foster care, family model residential support, all the way up to senior job training and employment. So with the Title V program in West Tennessee. So we work with Catholic Charities of West Tennessee, for example. We provide a senior to do job training on their site. We provide the wage for that senior, and that senior gets job training. And we also do in-home care, home health. We also provide homebound vaccinations for COVID-19 vaccinations to seniors or those who are disabled in their homes, as well as we are part of the CREA initiative in Memphis, the Coordinated Response to Elder Abuse. And so we help victims of elder abuse. And we're on site. We have an amazing nurse. I love her name. Her name is Liz Dayton. And so if there's ever a senior that's a victim is in need, we have a nurse that is on site with the police and fire department. So I love waking up and fundraising and doing what I do. And Jennifer and I were very involved with, I'm the AFP Memphis membership chair, and I'm a part of the Grants Professionals Association of the Mid-South as their vice president. So I'll take it over to Jennifer.
Well, thanks so much for having us today. I'm pretty excited about this. Ethics, though, was not a topic that I really felt like I knew a lot about, but now I do. So Chessie talked me into it. So I'm Jennifer Strain. I'm with the Campbell Foundation. We are an orthopedic medical clinic. I work for the foundation for the clinic, and the clinic is worldwide known for its residency and fellowship education programs, for its orthopedic research that we do, and also for our community outreach. Not only here in Memphis, but we do have a medical mission trip that we have started about 10 years ago. So that's what I raise money for every day. Of course, we have a lot of doctors that graduated from our program that live all over the world, and so I'm in charge of them and soliciting them and partnering with them. And then also I am in charge of employee giving, and we have over 600 employees, and we also have a large employee payroll donor program. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we do on the day-to-day.
Okay, so here is the schedule of our presentation today. So we're going to be going into the 7 deadly sins of fundraising. This research has been done by Michael Rosen. He does an amazing presentation on this. So if you want to go further, even deeper into this material, just research in Google. Here's the link, and I know you'll have access to these slides after our presentation. He does a whole series about it. So be sure if you want to dig more, research into him. Originally founded by Tim J. Burchill. We're going to also discover our gift acceptance policies and discuss mission creep, having those difficult conversations with donors, and as well as discussing programs and questions and answers at the end. If it's all right, if y'all do want to have questions in between, that's what we did yesterday, more than happy to answer questions in between. I know sometimes it's like pops in your head. If you want to write it down away at the end, you can do that too. And you can join us on our presentation again, our poll that we're about to have. So Jennifer, take it away.
So we were curious today of who's in the room, and I would like for you to tell us if you're a full-time fundraiser.
Okay.
Just one? All right. And then also, so the second question is who's involved in fundraising but has other duties? Okay, a lot. And then how much do you know about ethical fundraising? Nothing, a little bit, or I'm an expert. And then
I love the nothing. How it was like, okay, there we go. It's like 100% nothing. I was like, okay, everybody, I think you know a little something.
Well, good. And then have you experienced an ethical dilemma in your workplace. Okay. Did you get your Slido results? Okay, cool. All right, so October just happens to be Ethics Month. That's kind of crazy that we were given this topic, and it just happens to be the month of October. So I think I'll play the video first, and because this is the president of our AFP International, and since it is Ethics Month, he sent out this message.
Hey everyone, Mike from AFP here. Guess what? It's October, and that means that the fundraising community is celebrating Ethics Awareness Month. And I mean celebrating, because ethics is the cornerstone of fundraising. Let's not forget that ethics allows us to inspire donors and connect them with causes because they trust us, and trust is key. Ethics is what makes fundraising the impact profession. So join us throughout the month as we offer articles, videos, free webinars, and so many other tools and resources to help you better practice ethical fundraising. And this year, we're also focusing on the intersection of ethics and diversity, inclusion and equity. So when I'm saying the fundraising community is celebrating, I mean the entire community. I'm so pleased that our sister organizations around the world are joining us and providing articles and their own perspectives on ethics. Our theme this year, as you will have seen, is hashtag I signed the code, because AFP members are required to sign our code of ethics every single year. AFP membership means that you adhere to our code of ethics, and everyone knows that. So sign it, put your name to it. Let's walk the walk together. Join us and let's celebrate Ethics Awareness Month and remind everyone of the impact that ethical and effective fundraising can have on the world. Thank you.
All right, so I did want to tell you just a little bit about AFP. In case you don't know, it's such a wonderful resource for you if you ever have a question about something or you're interested in a topic in particular. I would definitely use them as a resource. Because it was founded in 1960, and there's about 30,000 members, and there's about 240 chapters across the world. AFP has inspired global change and supported efforts that have generated over $1 trillion. AFP individual and organizational members raise over $115 billion annually. So that's quite the impact that they're having. So I did want to tell you what their mission is. The Association of Fundraising Professionals empowers individuals and organizations to practice ethical fundraising through professional education, networking, and research. So I want to tell you a little bit about our chapter, because I think I've been in there about 10 years, and Chessie's been in, gosh, I think it's more like 7. I always, if I guess on years, I need to add about 2 or 3. We are the Mid-South chapter. So we have the Mid-South area is Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi. So we do bring in fundraisers from that whole region. And we started in 1985, and we have about 150 members in our chapter. And then we do a lot of monthly, we used to have luncheons. We are kind of back into luncheons. You just don't know what to do. And then we did a lot of virtual programming last year. Lots of Zooms. And because we wanted to keep our members informed of what we were doing as the board, and then also to keep them thinking about fundraising education and different topics. We always have a lot of really interesting topics and a lot of interesting speakers. We also have a National Philanthropy Day event that's coming up. Your city may also be celebrating this as well. It's kind of a big deal for us. We recognize philanthropists in our city that are every year at this, and we have a party called the Crystal Awards, and we'll be having it on November 12th. just so happened, though, Chessie did win an award this year for emerging philanthropist for all of her work that she does, not only here in Memphis with our chapter, but we at the international level with AFP, and then a zillion other boards and organizations that she's involved with. I don't see how she has the energy to do all that. So we're going to start out with the Donor Bill of Rights, because I think this is a good place to start if you organization is looking to kind of get your mind around ethical policies. The Donor Bill of Rights was created by AFP, but also 3 other organizations. So CASE, which is Council for Advancement of Supportive Education, also the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy, and all these organizations are great resources for you if you ever have questions about making a policy or needing a template for a policy. They're just a really great resource for you. So I think we did give you a printout of the Donor Bill of Rights, and I'll just kind of highlight some of these. We don't need to read every single one of them since you have a copy, but the donor needs to always be informed of the organization's mission and the way the organization intends to use the donated funds. To be informed of the identity of those serving on the board, and to expect the board to exercise prudent judgment in the spending of the donations. They also, number 3 is you always want your donors to have access to the organization's most recent financial statements. 4 is to be assured of their gifts will be used in the purposes for which they are given. I will talk a little bit about that later, because with COVID, everything changes, and sometimes your donors need to be informed of how you are pivoting to continue your services. To receive appropriate acknowledgement and recognition. And I think that's it for now. Those are kind of the highlights of what we're going to talk about today, and those kind of tie in to what we're talking about. So next, Chessie's going to talk about gift acceptance policies.
Yes. So you also have a handout. These are our Meritons and a sample of Campbell Foundation's gift acceptance policies. So if you do not have a gift acceptance policy into place, or you're in a new your organization, but fundraising is new to you, and you're kind of having those conversations of, should I accept this donation versus not accepting a gift? This is a great place to start. So there's the Donor Bill of Rights and Code of Ethics handout you received. That's through AFP. And then you have the gift acceptance policies that we've created as our own organization. So you can use our resources as you wish. You can take it back to your organization. If you don't have one in place, I highly encourage you to do so, because, for example, you may be put in a position where a donor gives you $50,000, or I like this example because at Meriton I get this one all the time. I would love to give you all these worn clothes all the time, and because we have a Silver Bells program that promotes new clothing, and I'm like, I cannot accept your worn clothing, right? And so you can say, we have a policy, you have something you can say back to your donor, right? Saying, I have a policy to where I can't accept these. However, Goodwill, Salvation Army, they're a better resource for you, and they better benefits their mission, right? So you have that policy in a place where it's kind of like a stand up for yourself. You can also have a conversation with your, executive director. Sometimes you can, or your board members. I know someone's like, I want a car, right? Like, yeah, but is the car really going to benefit our mission, right? Like, we have these policies in place. Let's really think this through. So it gives you that stand up before you have those conversations. So we wanted y'all to have these. So if you don't have one, or you maybe want to revisit your policies, this is a great tool for you to start.
All right, so we are going to talk about the 7 deadly sins. Now, we did not make these up. We actually got these from, he is deceased now, unfortunately. Tim Birchill was a CFRE, and he wrote an article called The 7 Ethical Dilemmas in Philanthropic Fundraising. So we kind of based our talk today on his 7 that he identified. There was a really good article written also by Michael Rosen. It was in the Advancing Philanthropy magazine, and he used these as well, and then he elaborated on them. It's a really good article, so you can just Google 7 deadly sins, and fundraising, and it should come up for you. So our first one is conflict of interest. And I was going to read two of Meriton's policies that Chessie provided, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about when you need to put it into these policies. So the first one is engaged in no activity that conflicts with the fiduciary, ethical, and legal obligations to the agency and its clients, and effectively disclose all potential and actual conflicts of interest. Such disclosure does not preclude or imply ethical impropriety. So there are some free resources online for you if you need to put together a conflict of interest policy. I know that our board members have to sign one every year because we're an orthopedic provider, and so we have a lot of doctors on our board that also have relationships with device companies like Smith & Nephew or Medtronic, and so they have to disclose all those relationships that they have. Also our board members that are not, community board members, lay board members, they have to disclose any connections that they have to that are conflicts. They may be a consultant for a company or a consultant for us, so it's it could get a little bit sticky. So you definitely want them to sign that every year. It takes forever to get them back. For some reason, we have to bug them like 12 times to get it. I'm not sure why that's so hard to do. But I did want to talk a little bit about, there's a few of these conflicts of interest that really do warrant your attention. So the first one is direct financial gain or benefit to the donor. So probably just a basic, really good example is a board member whose personal company sells products or services to the nonprofit. That's just a really good relationship thing that you need to be aware of, and maybe proceed with caution there. Indirect financial gain or benefit to the donor, and that's when the example would be a spouse or a child of the board member is hired to work at the organization. So need to watch out for that. Non-financial gain or benefit to the donor, and that would be someone who's related to the board member but receives services from the organization. So that would be Campbell Clinic, because if someone comes in as a patient of ours and they're also on the board, then that's where things get a little bit gray. So just be aware of those types of relationships that your board members have with your organization. Oh, there's also a fourth one, conflict of loyalty. And that's when a board member may be on two separate boards, and so they may advocate on behalf of the other organization, and then that may cause some conflicts between the two organizations. So, because I know a lot of board members, they're on a lot of boards. So, and even some of our board members, now that I'm thinking about it, there are some kind of, they're on two boards that are in our organizations kind of do the same thing. So you have to be a little bit careful there. So, the second sin is gift restrictions. To be ensured that the discussions with your donors about your annual fund are also encouraging them to make that an unrestricted gift. Sometimes they restrict it so much it's hard to use. You're all aware of that. Meritan's policy is to take care to ensure that contributions are used in accordance with the donor's intentions, and then to ensure proper stewardship of charitable contributions. A gift acceptance policy, though, will outline the types of gifts and sources that you will and will not accept. The policy will also establish when a binding or non-binding gift agreement is necessary. Those are usually when somebody's name's going to be put on the building or a wall or something in your space. Those become a little bit trickier. The last last point is important because the restricted purpose is, if the restricted purpose is a canceled or does not come to fruition, it's important for the donor to give you the approval to use those funds in a different way, or you may have to give them back. So I have an example of that. So I'm not going to say it was a difficult conversation necessarily, but I can think of some difficult conversations that I could have with my donor. But the last 2 years, as you know, this little thing called COVID happened, and things changed mostly for event fundraising. We have our biggest fundraiser every year, and it's actually coming up on the October 30th. And so last year we had already secured all of our donors for this event. So it's $100,000 in sponsorships. We'd already secured the event. Of course, then COVID happened, and we postponed the event from April to October, thinking, oh, we'll be through this. That'll be something of the past, and then we'll have this wonderful party, and everything's grand, right? And then that didn't happen. We ended up having to cancel the in-person part of the event, and that, there's a lot of donor benefits that were going to be also canceled because they weren't going to have this in-person party, and all their we weren't going to be showing their logos off, and all the things that they were getting in return for their sponsorship. So we had to call every single sponsor and have this conversation with them. We're having to cancel. Now everyone knew that we're all in the same boat here, so that made it a lot easier. But they could have said that they wanted their money back, and they didn't. Everyone stuck with us, which was amazing and a miracle in itself. And then 2021 rolled around, and we thought, we're going to have a party. And of course, we made it later in the year, thinking, we'll get through spring and summer, and then we'll have this fabulous party. And then once again, COVID part 2 started, and we had to cancel the in-person part of our event again, and we had all these sponsors again, and we had to make the same exact phone calls again. Luckily, they're all sticking with us. So for the second year. So I think those aren't necessarily difficult conversations because, well, I guess they could be if they said they wanted their money back. But just being transparent with what's going on and letting them make the final choice on what they're going to do, because a lot of them already paid us their sponsorship money. So that's it for that part, and we're on to number 3.
Accountability. So I'll go a little bit into difficult conversations that I've had with donors. I'll have an example. Y'all may have received grants. Do any of y'all receive grants from anyone? Okay, so for example, we had to have the conversation of saying this was funded for this specific program, right? And you may have some other staff members who are saying, but now it's COVID and we may need the funds to go to this other program. Has anyone experienced something similar? Okay, so for example, I had to say this is what the funds were intended to use for. So it was with my foster care inspiration room, and it was with Baptist and Nike, and Baptist at the time when they signed on did not know Nike was about to sign on. So Nike then accepted the award before Baptist officially accepted. So I had to go back to Baptist to say, you're not going to be the only one with exclusive rights to this room. Nike also came on board before we officially accepted the award. And we couldn't use the funds for, so we love your funds, but, we couldn't use it for another room, right? We couldn't use Nike's funds to do something else with. We had to use it for the specific rights of the room. If you do come with a conflict where it's with another program and another program's like, but we need the funds. You're the organization, your grant funder. If, for example, you have, your year-around report that you do, have those conversations with your grant funders and say, after you have a positive outlook and review, saying, we actually need funds for this now. Would you be interested in being a part of this program? And creating that relationship. And why I'm saying this, because fundraising is a relationship activity. And when we go into this next video, we're going to show you. It goes in transparency and accountability. So I wanted to mention that. So accountability. To distinguish themselves from those organizations, legitimate charities should be transparent to earn public trust. That's that saying where it's easier to lose trust than to gain it back, right? As soon as you lose that trust from someone, it's so much harder. For me, I forgive very easily. It's probably a weakness of mine. But with organizations, as soon as we had this conversation about millennials giving yesterday, as soon as you lose their trust, they're out the door and they're not coming back. They'll go to another organization with a snap of a finger. So be sure that when you're, posting about your financials, your 990s, whatever it is legitimate and it is true and it's going by your budget. If a donor asks for your budget, then show them the budget of your program. If a grant funder asks for a budget, or publish it online. You can post your 990s to your website. So that way it makes it easy and say, we're transparent enough, it's on our website, right? I just want to be sure I have everything. Yes, discuss being transparent about how you spend your funds and be transparent with your overall financials. And this is also, I know I have a lot of marketing communications people in the room, right? Yeah, everyone's shaking their heads because I'm that way too. Be sure your wording and your marketing materials coincides with what you're actually doing. So it's never going to be 100%, right? So when I showed my Silver Bells flyer yesterday. It's never going to say all of the funds that you have given us are going to this program, because that's not true. Some of it's going to your overhead, some of it's going to another unrestricted fund, unless it truly is. Like with a special event, for example, you have expenses that you have to cover, right? So it's never going to be all of this money is going to this amazing event and all to our programs, because it has to cover expenses somewhere. So you have to say majority of your funds. So be sure that you are transparent and that you are, with your wording, being very careful with what you write on social media, your blog, your website. Never say all, just say majority, right? What do you say? Majority. So with Meriton's policies, take care to ensure that all solicitation materials are accurate and correctly reflect the agency's mission and use of solicited funds. Take care to ensure that there are no material omissions, misstatements, or facts or misrepresentation regarding to the use of these funds. So it kind of goes into there. For example, I see this statistic all the time. 1 in every $36 goes to benefit our mission. Is it really 1 in 36? Because I had that once, and I had to update it with a donor, and they asked me, and I was like, I need to check with my CAO to make sure that is correct. And it ended up being updated to where it was better, 1 in every $5 or 1 in every 4, I believe now. So making sure that whatever you are putting on your materials, you're going to get asked from a donor either way, whether it's today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, you will get asked. And so make sure that it truly reflects what you're doing currently. So here's an amazing video from Watson and Associates, and it basically breaks down a lot of these 7 deadly sins, and so we wanted to show it to you.
Hi, welcome to this week's Fundraising Friday. October is Fundraising Ethics Month, and so in honor of that, I thought we'd talk about some of the ethics of fundraising. According to the Association of Fundraising Professionals Code of Ethics, 2 foundational elements underlie whether or not fundraising principles are ethical. Those are honesty and transparency. You need to be open and honest with everyone you deal with in a fundraising capacity. Think about it this way. Fundraising is a relation-based activity. You are building relationships with donors, potential donors, and partners. And a good relationship needs to have as its foundation honesty. So what does that look like in fundraising practice? First of all, it means that you are open and honest with them about what's going on in your organization. You don't lie if you're having troubles with your organization or inflate the numbers or anything else like that. Second of all, you, your volunteers, your board need to be very honest with the people you're talking to about your relationship with the organization. If you are staff, you tell them you're staff. If you're a volunteer, you tell them you're a volunteer. Third, it means that you make sure that you are using the donor's money in the way in which they intended. Often this may mean that you are going against your board, your boss, but you are the advocate for that donor. If they want their money to go toward program X, it doesn't matter if the organization is running low in operating income. The money goes to program X. They're relying on you to make sure that happens. I've worked with some clients where the money was tight and they wanted money to pay for one thing when the donor's intent was another. Sometimes you have to send the money back. That's not an easy thing to do, but if you are advocating for your donor and you are ethically fundraising, that's what you're going to do. Transparency means that if they ask to see the budget, you show them. If they want to see your 990, you show them. If they want to see how their money was spent, you show them. They want to see their donor record. They want to see what information you have in the database. You show them. So make sure you're not keeping any information that you would be embarrassed to share. That's this week's Fundraising Friday. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
Beautifully stated, right? I love her. Jennifer found this amazing video. So be sure that if you don't have your 990s or things that are updated, I know when I give to organizations, or for me specifically, I look for corporate philanthropy partners, and I look up their 990s to see what organizations they've given to in the past to see if I align with their mission. A lot of corporate philanthropy partners do not post their 990s. So think about that when your employees are wanting to give to your own organizations, how they want to see what they're giving back to, whether they announce it or not. Announcing your results is so important as well, and making sure that you're not inflating those numbers to make it sound amazing. And if you have, if you're going through a time where your unrestricted fund is not doing so well, tell your donors that. Because if you're in trouble and your donors have been loyal to you and they know that something is up, they will help you more than likely. I mentioned this yesterday to say donors will give if you just ask. The reason why they're not giving it to you is because you just haven't given them that little push yet. And if they say no, it's just a not yet. You just storage your donors to where they're building that relationship with your organization. Okay. And Jennifer, I'll leave it back to you.
So tainted money. So this is when a nonprofit organization accepts funds from a tainted source, or any money that was illegally acquired. I've never come into this situation myself. Have you? Is anyone? But Meriton does have a line in their policy is to engage in no activity that harms the agency, the clients, the donors, or professional demeanor of the organization. So I do have a case study for you. And I guess we'll just raise your hand when there are a couple, you can guess what the right answer is, but we're not going to do the poll. We'll just do old-fashioned way. So here is a case study that I found in another ethical fundraising book. There's so much resources out there when you really look at it. It's a very deep subject. So the example that they gave was that a city hospital desperately needs a new critical care wing. The nearest facility is 250 miles away, and patients needing critical care are often not surviving the trip. Shortly after the hospital board announces a new capital campaign, a local business person offers to donate the entire cost of the new wing, provided the hospital names the wing after him. Now, suppose the donor is known as an underworld figure who allegedly makes his money from drug trafficking. Would it be in violation of the AFP Code of Ethical Principles to accept the money? Yes? Okay, no? You have a law degree in your future. It depends, or don't know. So those were the four answers. The actual answer is, it depends. You were right. Allegedly is an important word here. Fundraisers and nonprofit organizations aren't judge and jury, and the hospital leadership needs to assess that situation and see if that relationship or that transgression goes against the mission of the organization. And they need to make the final decision there. So the second part of this story is, suppose the donor is willing to forget the name on the building thing, and but he wants to be put on the board. Should you accept the money if he wants to be on the board, or if he's forcing his way on the board? Yes? No? Go ahead. Good. Well, it could be, but the answer in the book is no. And nonprofit boards have developed and this is why these policies and procedures are so important to have in your back pocket, because these policies and procedures are inviting people. They have policies and procedures on who they're going to invite to be on their board, and so an individual should not be able to force their way onto your board. So the answer to that one is no.
Beautiful. I love that picture of the wolf. Like, it's so fun for me. But whenever we get into big bad donors, I haven't had that experience. I've heard of people having those experiences though, where their mission is to, for example, is to do something, and then they want to cure cancer, and that person who's wanting to cure cancer, they have that reputation. So those policies are created by Meriton, by Campbell's, and with AFP because they have happened, right? They just didn't come up out of the blue. Unfortunately, these things that have happened with donors, and that's why they're here. These policies are here to protect you and your organization and its clients that you serve. So donor privacy. Here are the points. Respect the privacy of prospects and donors. Fundraisers protect the confidentiality of that privileged information. Do not sell, share, or trade donors' personally identifiable information with any other organization without their permission. All donor records must remain within the organization when the fundraiser leaves. And really fun statistics, a fundraiser's time, like their lapse within the organization, is about a year. So that's why they put that policy into place, is because normally fundraisers jump to organizations here and here and here. And yeah, I've been at Meriton for 6, but it's just a high statistic. It's been a year and a half is when they lapse. And fundraisers should not take that information with them. So the questions that we wanted, before we go into case studies, the questions that you should ask yourself is, what information is acceptable for your organization to offer? So when you're asking for donations, what is necessary for you? Do you need to really know their gender? Do you want to know their age? What is the most important thing for you? Is their birthday? It's great to know, right? And if you have does anyone use wealth engines in here for prospect donor research? Is it really important to know if it's important to know about if they have an airplane or a boat, or really keeping that information? If you have that information, that is okay, but using that information for yourself and for your organization and not using it for unethical purposes. That's where that border is. What information is acceptable to collect? Who should have access to your prospect donor information? So Meriton, we have a donor information system and a grant system. Those who are only involved in the fundraising and participating in solicitation of those funds, as well as our executive director, has access to this information. How will those entrusted with the information be trained on its use and protection? So, for example, I've wanted to always do this idea, and y'all can steal it. I've always wanted to call my donors on St. Patrick's Day and say, we're so lucky to have you. Thank you so much. And just because I'm a corny person, I've always wanted to do it. I haven't done it, but it's so cute though, right? But I can't do it alone. My board members would have to participate. I would have to recruit volunteers and train them to participate. I can't just have a volunteer call, let's say a $100,000 donor, to say X, Y, and Z, because if that volunteer is not trained, they may not know this. They may keep that information, and it may be by innocent mistake and take it to another organization, right? So we have to train our volunteers specifically with confidential information to sign a release to say, this is confidential information. And noon. Okay, and so Meriton's policies are to not disclose privileged or confidential information to unauthorized parties, to not sell that information. Meriton will honor any request from donors to acknowledge gifts as anonymous, and make every effort to remove a donor from all mailing lists upon request. I know that one's hard. When they click unsubscribe, they unsubscribe, right? You don't call them and be like, join back on our email list, right? If they chose to unsubscribe, it's because they no longer want to receive those communications. And so I found this case study very interesting. But before I say that, I will say that Meriton, we are a COA agency, Council on Accreditation. In our policies, you know, many nonprofits out there post an annual report, right? And your donors are listed at the end to thank them and to acknowledge them, etc. With us being a COA agency and having that accreditation, we are not allowed to release the names of our donors. So we have had that conversations before to say, why don't we do an annual report and promote these amazing donors? And I have to come back to have that conversation to say, with our COA accreditation, we are not allowed. We have to keep the privacy of our donors the most important. This case study is pretty amazing though, because it's recent. As it's been in the news with the fundraising field, it's like the hot topic. Thomas More Law Center, they're a nonprofit that's based out of Michigan. At the time, California state law required for any nonprofits who are soliciting within their state to release the names and addresses of their major donors, right? So if you're soliciting within the state of California, you had to provide your solicitation list to them. Thomas More came back and sued the state of California. And so the Supreme Court ruled at 6-3 that the state of California was wrong in this decision. So Thomas More won the case, which means now California can no longer require those names of donors because there was, I think back, it may have been, I don't know the exact information, but that information was released. And so people who were soliciting this information from nonprofits were really concerned about the donor's privacy. So that was let me go back into here. Yeah, it was back, I think it was in July when that ruling happened. So it's very current. It still happens with an organization. States require that. So if you are in California or you're soliciting in California, you don't have to worry about that anymore. But make sure when you're looking at other states, you don't have to do that. Donor privacy is the most important thing here. And given that trust, imagine if, think about all those times where you hear about Facebook or Instagram and your information, and you hear about like rumors behind the scenes and your information has been given to unauthorized parties. It doesn't make me want to use the channel anymore. So making sure, even though I still do, when I do see that, I research it, right? If your organization's doing that, you may lose a donor in the process. So be sure that you value the donor privacy here. It is an ethical deadly sin for a reason. And when I saw this case, and AFP, they post amazing resources. If you're a member, or if you're not a member, Advancing Philanthropy magazine, this month specifically is about ethics. And so you can read a whole thing of case studies and leadership development in that magazine. Great resources for you to come by. And they said about this case study and showing that ruling 6-3 Supreme Court was in the favor of the nonprofit. Compensation. Charities are prohibited from being misleading and from paying commissions to staff and contracted service providers. The reason why we want to discuss this, because this happens. You don't hire on commission, and I know Meriton has these policies too. Do not accept finder's fees, gifts, and bonuses. Bonuses are okay if it's like if you get a 3% raise every single year or 2% raise, whatever the average is, if the whole organization gets it. If it's just a fundraiser, that's where it gets a little dicey. And the reason why I say this, because when the fundraiser is asking for funds, they don't need to be motivated by their own personal gain. It needs to be out of the mission and benefiting the mission. So that's why it's unethical to do so. And it's a personal case study. As Jennifer and I, we get, and probably all of you as well, people on LinkedIn reach out to us to apply for jobs or to ask us for an interview to recruit for jobs. And I'm not afraid to say either. I got a job offer, and my job offer included a commission for the organization. And I had to have this difficult conversation with an executive director, and bonuses as well. It was like both, to say, and she was very well established in the city, so I was like, ooh, cringing my feet, to have those difficult conversations to say, based on the AFP Code of Ethics that I have signed, it is unethical for me to accept this position due to the fact that you are asking me to receive a commission and bonuses based upon the money I have raised and funded for. And Jennifer has an example too. So it happens. So if you are in this position, just, there are certain ways to where it is acceptable versus not acceptable, but just accepting a commission based upon the percentage of what you fundraised by AFP Code of Ethics is unethical. And here we go, Jennifer.
So, cooking the books. To raise more money, charities can sow fear in providing inflated or misleading numbers about a problem. So, the example that we wanted to give today was about a university that's in the Southwest, and they, for 20 years, provided inflated alumni giving percentages, and as a result of the revelation, the university is listed as unranked in the 2019 edition. So this really struck a chord with me because I'm an alumni fundraiser, and I'm always being told in board meetings, what's our percentage of alumni that give? These are doctors that are talking to me. That's a doctor voice. And then they'll say, well, the University of Tennessee's got 45% of their alumni. That, you know, and it's like, and this, it's like maybe those numbers can be inflated a little bit. They're not always necessarily straight across the board. So sometimes as a fundraiser, you're being held to a standard of other organizations that are like us. And it's not always necessarily the truth. Yeah, so just be sure that when you're striving to reach those same milestones, that you keep that in check. So I think we're getting close to lunchtime.
I believe so. And I know that a lot of you are marketing and communications directors in the room, so we wanted to discuss this with you guys because storytelling through those that you serve sometimes can be that unethical breaking point. What is ethical? Posting your client on a billboard may, depending on what media consent stuff they sign, may not be the most ethical thing to do. Suggestions, instead of you calling all these clients to say, we would love to use you for your marketing materials and X, Y, and Z, it's going to be so great. They don't know you, probably. They may be a little intimidated by you, especially through me. Like Meriton Silver Bills program, it's similar to Salvation Army's Angel Tree program. We do it for seniors throughout those that we serve and those in adult protective services. So I have a spotlight every single year. I don't just go to a random client and ask, right? I specifically go to program managers, and having a great relationship with your program managers who are on the front line of your organization is super beneficial. Without them, I wouldn't get the content that I receive, qualitative content. And I ask this program manager, and I ask her every single year, I'm like, who do you think is going to be wanting to give back to the organization this way and volunteer this way? Signs of media consent, making sure, if you don't have a media consent policy, I'm more than happy to share Meriton's policy with you. We update it every single year. And 1 year was Alma, and then we have Shirley, and we have our caregivers who are involved in the process, and they love it. I don't, back in the day, pre-COVID, I would go and take pictures and make sure that I'm personal, and I would bring, my name is Chessie, and I would love to give you some cookies. And Ms. Alma gave me cookies 1 year, and so then I returned the favor, like post thanking you them for being a spotlight, and then she unfortunately got diabetes, and so then she told me to keep the cookies. I love Ms. Alma to death. So having those relationships with your program managers, you're not undermining those that you serve. If you're in a position to where they don't want to do it, then just don't do it, right? There's other clients that you can tell the stories through. Meriton, we're specific, we have foster care children. I cannot post a picture of a foster care child. I had a sponsor ask me, can I take pictures of the room with children? And I had to say, well, the back of their heads, or we can get other children in the room, but I cannot be that person. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it takes an example. Jennifer provided this image where it was the back of the head, but that's a staff person that has signed a media consent. I have staff sign media consents too, because some staff may not want to be a part of, on part of publications and materials too. Some people are more introverted than others, and you have to respect your staff's privacy too. So whenever I was present, with that situation with that donor, I said, we can't take pictures of the children. Even the back of their head, sometimes I feel uncomfortable with foster care children specifically. And so I'm like, we could take a picture amazing of the room. But then I have a success story of a beautiful man named Octavius. He's a man now. And he graduated, he's at the University of Memphis. And so we promote success stories for when they age out when they're 18 years old. He was a foster care child at Meriton, but he's now no longer a foster care child. He's a success story. So there's different ways to get around it. Creating opportunities for those that you're not undermining that you're serving is so important too. Meriton has a senior letter, a volunteer opportunity for seniors that we're serving. And so even though I really, without a media consent, and I don't want to break HIPAA, I'm not giving last names. You have to be very confidential with that information, because if you give out that information, that donor may ask, why are you breaking confidentiality for me, one, or two, your client, you're undermining that client and their privacy. And so this is a great example. Jennifer has provided this picture, and this is of a staff member. And again, I'm in charge of our agency internal newsletter, our email communications. Everything that I get, I have a media consent form, because I'm, even if there's not an image, I'm just mentioning the person's first and last name. I want to be sure that I'm respecting the donors, the staff member, the volunteer, whoever it may be's privacy. Jennifer, do you want to go more into anything else? And I know sometimes as the fundraising director or marketing and communications directors, sometimes you're pulling teeth to get content from staff, or you want to post more on social media, but you're like, I need qualitative content. Really, have virtual coffees if you can't, if you're working remote or whatever it may be, have virtual coffees with them and just say, this is the importance of this. If you provide me with this, not only will we get brand awareness, but you may receive funds from raising your program. Explain the importance of why it is, and I've gotten more success that way. Yeah, these are little case scenarios. For example, Marlboro gives you $250,000, and you are trying to help it find a cure for cancer. Do you accept the gift? No. If it depends on your policy at the same time, right? A major donor wants to see your 990. You show them your 990s. And so these are just examples to that you can see. And these are our resources that we have. So anything that our donor bill of rights, the ethics, whatever you want to see, those resources, you just click them. They're linked to where you can do some more digging. And do we have any questions before we head for lunch? I know y'all probably really hungry, and I heard the food was amazing, and that red velvet cake looked awesome yesterday. I didn't have it though, but I really wanted it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing that. Any other questions? Yeah. You don't. Yeah, I think I thought it was 7, but I could be wrong. Okay. Any other questions?